Good morning. I wasn't nervous about doing that until I was nervous about doing that. I come out of retirement for that one. It'd been about 10 years since I had done that. But we wanted to do that song, and it's a powerful song, right? I think it's a very important song that's been written in the last 5 years, and if you have ears to hear and eyes to see, you know exactly what that song is talking about. It was written around 2020, I think, 2021 maybe a little bit later. But it's a great song. It's written by a gentleman named John Gira. I would encourage you to find it on YouTube, download it, listen to it. The lyrics are very powerful. And this song speaks to the tension of the book that we're talking about, Revelation. It really speaks to the dream of the Revelation as well. If you're a guest this morning, we have spent the last 4 weeks digging into this crazy text that's found in the Christian scripture, the New Testament, called the Revelation. If you don't know much about it, good for you. You probably lived a healthy, productive life. If you know a lot about it, you're probably on the other spectrum of unhealthy spirituality. So that's just kind of how it works. The more you know about the Revelation, the more problematic it probably is for your life, right? But we've just kind of been exploring it. And in that song, there's a chorus. And it's the only part of the song that repeats over and over again. If you'll notice, each one of the verses is different and speaks to kind of a different reality. But there's a chorus, the heart of the song, the prayer of the song, the dream of the song. And it says, I need to know that there is justice, that it will roll in abundance, and that you're building a city where we arrive as immigrants and you call us citizens and you welcome us as children home. Right? There's this beautiful image that there is this prayer that I just have to believe that you're building this city. And that's what I want to talk about today as we wrap up this crazy 5 weeks on Revelation. I want to talk about this city, this beautiful image that's actually the final image, the final word in this apocalypse. So one of the great images of the Revelation, if you're familiar with it, is this idea of the New Jerusalem. How many have ever heard of that phrase, the New Jerusalem? I'll see you all have unhealthy spirituality too. If you've never heard of it, you're like, no, what's the issue? Well, the New Jerusalem is this magnificent city where Team Lamb takes up residence. And we get this image from the last 2 chapters in the apocalypse, the Revelation of John. Now, we can take this image of the New Jerusalem in one of 2 ways. We can take it literally, or we can take it seriously. I don't think we can do both. I think that when people try to take it literally, we move into the realm of fantasy. I think we move into the realm of fiction. I think we move into the realm of really problematic spirituality. But I think we can take it seriously because it is the climax of the performance. It is the end of the dream. It's what John leaves us with, his dream, his idea. So what is that we can take from seriously? And what wisdom can we find from John in his vision of what the world should be like? So first of all, I think we should know that the New Jerusalem, right, this image reveals John's dream for a church, okay? Now, for John, this was not the church, it was a church because there was only one church. There was no need for a definite article in front of church. It was just an article. It was a church meaning the people who were called out, the ecclesia, right? This church, not necessarily the local church like what we are or every other church around town, but the big, broad, capital C, lowercase c Catholic church, all right? This, for John, he was like, there's one church, and the vision of the New Jerusalem was John's dream for what that church should be like and could be like. In Revelation chapter 21, verses 9 through 11, John says this. He says, one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues, lots of 7s in there, I get it. You're like, bowls and plagues, what's that all about? We're not talking about that today. It says, one of those angels came and said to me this, said, come and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb. Now, I get that we're dealing with ancient literature, okay? So the language here, we just have to kind of suspend our modern understandings of bride and groom, and you're going back to this idea, which is unfortunately grounded in patriarchy, grounded in a pretty unhealthy view of women, but this was the image that we're given. So we just have to allow John to be in his time, in his space. And John says, here's the thing, there's this bride of the Lamb that is being prepared. And then he says, and then that angel carried me away in the spirit to a mountain, great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. What we miss, if you've read it over and over again, is the first part of this, where the angel says, do you want me to show you the bride? And the bride is the city. A lot of times you've been told, or if you've heard about this, it's like, no, the city is heaven and this space that God's going to, but that's not at all the image. The image is, this is what the bride of Christ is, this city. And I want to look at a few other passages and see what exactly these passages and this description of the city tell us about how John dreamed about the church. The first thing is this, that John dreamed of a church that was grounded in history. For John, the New Jerusalem, his representation of the bride of Christ, the church, this was not something new. This was not something that would ever evolve, but it was grounded in a historical reality, right? So this church was built on two things, the story of ancient Israel and the story of the apostles, the 12 disciples of Jesus. A few verses later in Revelation 21, verses 12 through 14, he's describing the city, and he says it had a great high wall with 12 gates and with 12 angels at the gates. And on the gates were written the names of the 12 tribes of Israel. And there were 3 gates on the east and 3 gates on the north and 3 on the south and 3 on the west. And the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Now, are we to take that literally? I don't think so. I don't think we're to take any of this literally, by the way. But what John is saying is that this city, this church, didn't just appear out of nowhere. Its understanding of God, its expression of God, its interaction with God is grounded in the ancient story of Israel and in the apostles. Secondly, John dreamed that a church, would be filled with God's presence and not God's priests. In other words, John didn't see a space for religion. John didn't see that the church needed religion. It didn't need a mediation between the divine. In Revelation 21, verses 2 through 3, a few verses earlier, John says, I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem. It was coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride, beautifully dressed for her husband. And then I heard a loud voice from the throne. And this voice said, look, God's dwelling place is now among the people. What is God's dwelling place for John? It's the church. It's those called out ones seeking to live a just life, seeking to live a life of courage, seeking to live a life of righteousness in terms of right behavior towards one another. And it says, and he will dwell with them. So John has this vision, right? And he sees this and he hears this voice, and the voice says, look, God's dwelling place is now there. There's no temple there. It says they will be God's people and God will be with them and be their God. So this New Jerusalem, right, is this space that doesn't need a temple. In 21, verse 22 through 23, he says, I didn't see a temple in the city. I didn't see one there because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. That there was no reason for sacrifice. There was no reason for mediation. There was no reason for people who said they had all the answers to tell everybody else how to do it, because the very presence of God would be available. And then it says the city doesn't need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp. Now, I'm not going to bore you with the dimensions and read you those passages, but what I want you to understand is the dimensions that are given of this city are built on, it's like a cube. And the dimensions are built on the framework of the tabernacle. And if you're familiar with the story of ancient Israel, when they were wandering in the wilderness, they had this tent that would move around with them, and they would set it up, and that was where they would worship their God, Yahweh, and that was seen as like this Holy of Holies. And then when they built the temple, the innermost part of the temple, the Holy of Holies, was a cube, and that was thought to be where God was. And that was thought to be the space that only a few people, well, only one person could go at once a year, and they better do it right or we're going to pull them out. Like they literally would, talk about putting a rope on them and a little cowbell, and if this bell stopped ringing, they were like, oh, somebody didn't clear their browser history. I don't know, right? Like, is that an appropriate joke for church? I don't know. I never said I was appropriate. Right? So there's this image that John is giving us that the church is now the Holy of Holies. This church is, for John, where you can see in the most fullest expression the divine reality. And that's what he's driving home. See, John is dreaming of, and he's revealing that the temple and the Holy of Holies, they're not necessary. And in his day, he's saying, stop longing for them. Because you got to remember, this was the most significant traumatic event for John and his community, was the destruction of the temple by Rome. And he's saying you don't need that, because what God is building, what God is bringing from heaven is you. You are the New Jerusalem. You are the bride. And so when John sees this and he imagines this, he's crying out, there's something brand new happening here. Another thing that John dreamed about the church was that John dreamed of a church that existed for the healing of the world. John's description of the New Jerusalem is not one where you would come and get all the wisdom and knowledge that you needed about God and make yourself right. No, Revelation 22 verses 1 through 2 says that then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. And on each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. Now here's what it says. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. You see, for John, the world was hurting. The world was full of injustice. The world was full of oppression. The effects of empire, disease, hunger, violence, war, all of these things were at stake. And for John, the city that was coming down from heaven, the New Jerusalem, which wasn't ever meant to be a physical place, it's an image of what God was building with the church, was to be a place where the nations would come and find water and food. A few verses later in Revelation 21, verse 24 through 26, he says, but the nations will walk by its light, and the kings of the earth will bring their splendor into it. On no day, it says, will the gates ever be shut, for there will be no night there. I just want you to capture this image of what this city is like. The city has all these gates, but they're never shut. The city is always available to anyone who wants to come. And it says the glory and the honor of the nations, they will be brought into it. Now notice in John's dream, this is crazy because you and I, many of us, if you grew up in kind of the same strand of religion that I grew up in, we're taught binary thinking. There's either Team Dragon or there's either Team Lamb. How many of y'all know, like, it's a little more complicated than that? Like, how many of y'all on, like, Tuesday, you were like, Team Dragon, get them, wipe them out. I pray that hell is eternal. I pray that it's conscious. I pray that it's real, and I pray that you're there. That's Tuesday, right? I mean, let's be honest. We got those days. And then on like Thursday, we're like, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Sanctified, filled with the Spirit, walking in the way of peace. Right? It's in it, you know. But for John, it's fascinating because in his dream, there are people that live outside the city and they come into the city and they go back out of the city. But everybody benefits from the city. Everybody does. The city is a blessing to the nations. And they realize it. I don't see John saying, everybody needs to come live in the city. Everybody needs to come live in the city and we'll just make it bigger. No, John doesn't. There is this movement in and out. The gates are always open. You can come in anytime you want. And so what I want us to just kind of hold to as we come to this final image in this book that is so often used in, like, I think, unhealthy ways. But if we think about it, John's giving us this beautiful vision of what God is creating in Christ and in the apostles and through the story of ancient Israel is a new community of people that will exist for the benefit of others. That out of this community of people, life will flow and healing will flow. And as crazy as this might sound, here's what I don't want us to miss as we wrap up this whole thing, is that John and Jesus, okay? John, the author of the apocalypse, and Jesus, you know, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, right? Two what could feel very opposite, actually share the same dream and the same prayer. The two of them actually share the same dream and the same prayer. When Jesus taught his disciples to pray, what did he say? Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And what does John give us? John gives us a city from heaven, coming down, existing, committed to the values of Team Lamb, committed to the healing of the nations. And this isn't about religion. You got to remember that. Like, there is no temple means there is no religion. There's just the divine, and there's just the glory, and there's just the experience. And there's righteousness and healing that flows out of it. And their dream, Jesus and John, is that there would be a group of people that were committed to discerning when to separate and when to accommodate. That there would be a group of people that would be committed to having clarity about what Team Dragon looks like and what Team Lamb looks like. See, I don't think that it's that simple that, oh, you're either Team Dragon or you're either Team Lamb. I think anytime we reduce things to binaries, we get into a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble. But we need to hold space for the tension. We need to hold space for the conversation between Jesus and John. Father, forgive them. No, throw them in hell. Father, forgive them. No, it's not even hell. I mean, it's the lake of fire. I mean, it's not even totally other concept, right? So John is dreaming about, and Jesus dreaming about this church that exists through the power of the Lamb. Not the power of this world, not through empire, but through the power of the Lamb, and is offering hope and healing to individuals, and is empowered then to heal the nations. And so, in your everyday normal life, as you think about it, does this image of the New Jerusalem have anything to say? I think it does. Because I think at the heart of John's apocalypse, at the heart of this idea of a city whose gates are always open, is an invitation to a new life. I actually think healthy religion brings us to a space of having to make a choice. And I don't think it's a choice about going to heaven or hell. I don't think it's a choice about eternity. I think it's a choice about what kind of human do I want to be? What kind of human do I want to be in this world? And what do I want to participate in this world? And our tradition, the revelation of John, the life and the teachings of Jesus are offering an opportunity to live in grace. To recognize that there are times where I'm totally going to be like Team Dragon. And to live in grace knowing that when I have those moments and I honor that in me and I, in a sense, confess that, and I'm going to use a word that maybe is traumatic for some, so hold on, I repent of that, not for the benefit of God, but for the benefit of my own soul care. I recognize and honor that wound that I've done to myself and to others. I find new life. Revelation 21:5 is this beautiful passage where the one who's seated on the throne says, I am making everything new. I'm making everything new. And for John, what was being made new and how it was being made new was through this creation of a church that would represent these values in our world. A very famous passage in Revelation that, again, I mean, it's just super easy to take this and apply it to whatever we want to. But in Revelation chapter 3, verse 20, Jesus says, listen, I'm standing at the door and I'm knocking. I'm knocking. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and eat with you and you with me. This is not like if you open the door of your heart and say a magic prayer, then guess what? You get to live in the New Jerusalem while everybody suffers out in the lake of fire. That's just not there. Granted, that pays the bills, and I've been tempted over the last 3 months to go back down that road just to pay some bills, right? We just manipulate people for 6-7 months, offer them Jesus again, and we'll see what happens. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. I never considered that. I've never considered that. But this is this image that there is this way of being that you're invited into. The Spirit of Christ, the living one, that God is always knocking on our door. And that's what Jesus, to me, when Jesus is knocking at a door, what does Jesus represent? Jesus represents a way of life lived for others, a way of life lived for the healing of the world, a way of life lived to bring hope and justice into this space, a way of life lived in healing and forgiveness of our own selves. Like, raise your hand up nice and high if you've ever done anything that you would call wrong. You, not somebody else, but you would call wrong. That was wrong, what I did, right? Hold on, keep it up. Let's just, come on now. Okay, here's what healthy religion does. Healthy religion helps you deal with your hand being raised right now. Healthy religion helps you have a way of moving forward without being overwhelmed by shame. And that's the invitation of Jesus. And in certain streams, that's come down forward and say a prayer. In certain streams, that's go through confirmation. And it looks differently. But what healthy religion does is it offers us a way to deal with guilt and shame. And what Jesus is saying is the guilt and the shame are actual lies, that you are fully known, that you are on your journey, that God is present in all of it, and that forgiveness was already there. You just walk into it. And so I do think that there is this beautiful invitation. And if you've never thought about that, if you've never said, what is my life all about? What kind of person do I want to be? How do I want to experience the other? Then Revelation offers you a beautiful invitation, not to get out of hell, okay? No. It offers you a beautiful invitation to this life right now, to be a place of healing, to find healing. And the decision to follow the Lamb is an apocalypse. It is an exiting of one world and an entering of another. It is a way of being that dies and you are resurrected into new life. The Revelation offers us a very similar way of thinking about life in Christ as Paul, who says, I am crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. It's just a different language. It's an apocalyptic language. One world ends and a new world begins. That's what baptism is powerful when it's understood, because baptism is this idea that one way of living is over and I've come into this new way of being. Now, I do think baptism is weird. I think that if Jesus were walking around, he'd be like, what the heck, guys? Seriously? Nobody baptizes anybody anymore. You couldn't think of something more creative that fit more in your culture? But we still pull out the tank and baptize people, you know? But that's the beauty of it. It's all the same invitation. We exit one world, we enter another. We leave the world of absolutes. We leave the world of greed. We leave the world of violence. We leave the world of bitterness. We leave the world of control and death. And we enter a world of mystery and generosity and sacrifice and forgiveness and freedom and life. And so at the heart of the apocalypse is an invitation to new life, and it's an invitation to heal. It's an invitation to heal. Revelation 22, verse 14 says, blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may go through the gates into the city. Now, John's drawing on an image that would have been very known by his audience, this idea of ritual purification, where you would clean your garments before you would go into the temple. And that's a healing process. It's a therapeutic process. Like, purity in the Revelation is living out the values of Team Lamb and separating from Team Dragon. That's the washing of the clothes. Y'all ever done anything where you just felt like, literally you went out and you did something, you got dirty? I'm like, sorry. I was a youth pastor for a long time, so it just stays in there. But you go out and you like a Tough Mudder, or you go out and you do some gardening, a lawn, you got grass all over you, right? What do you have to do? You just gotta get that off of you. It doesn't change you. You're not like a different person. It's just you get it off of you and you feel better, right? There's something therapeutic about a nice warm shower after working out or whatever it might be. And so the invitation to wash robes, right, is an invitation to consider how we've been tainted by empire. How we've been tainted by empire, and how we have been influenced by Team Dragon, how we have wounded others with our greed or with our false religion. And so we repent. Not because God doesn't want to have anything to do with you. Not because God is so pure that God can't be in your presence. If you were raised in that tradition, I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense when you really break it down. If you were raised in a tradition that told you that God was so pure and the only way you could get to God was through this sacrifice of Jesus and you were the one who deserved to die, that's a dangerous view of the cross. And it doesn't even make any sense, because that tradition also told you that Jesus was fully God and Jesus walked around earth and nobody ever spontaneously combusted around him. You can't have it both ways. And so there's something else happening in the cross. There's something else happening that's more beautiful, that's more powerful. And so the process of living in this revelation, of this invitation to new life to wash our clothes, is just saying, I've got to regularly get the filth off of me of Team Dragon, because it's corrosive and it's corruptive of my humanity. And it's corrosive and corruptive of your humanity. And you know how you wash your clothes? You know how you do that? I think it just begins when you hunger and thirst for righteousness. Not religious righteousness, not the righteousness of the Pharisees that Jesus and John the Baptist were clearly against. But when your heart is consumed by the vision of a just world, of a world where everyone knows their value, a world where everyone knows that they are fully loved, that they are fully known, where everyone knows that they are worthy of dignity, of opportunity, of care. Revelation chapter 22, verse 17 says this, "Let the one who is thirsty come." Let the one who is thirsty come. And let the one who wishes to take the free gift of the water of life, let them come. The gates are open. And this is not the water of life for eternity so that you don't get thrown into the lake of fire. No, it's the water of life for now. This way of living that is so filled with hope and joy and strength and courage in the midst of all of the garbage and horrible, harmful, dangerous things that we experience in this world. And so John says, come if you're thirsty. And Jesus in Matthew chapter 5 said, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. I think that there needs to be a new hunger and a new thirst for righteousness in the church. I think that for me, I grew up in an environment that told me to hunger and thirst for righteousness was all about what I did with my morality. It was all about, what music I listened to. It was all about who I dated or who I didn't date. It was all about whether or not you had premarital sex. It was all about whether or not, you had the right kind of friends, or you went to church the right time, or you gave, or all that stuff. But that is not what Jesus was about. It's not to say that Jesus didn't care about our morality or to say that it didn't matter, but that was not the heart of the historical Jesus. When Jesus says, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, he's talking about those people who have been oppressed and abused by the systems of empire. And they are desperate for it. They are desperate for righteousness. They are desperate for justice. And Jesus is saying they will be filled, and John is saying they'll be filled from the church. There will be a river of life that flows out, and the nations will recognize it. That's the vision. And as long as we're sitting around going, I just need that New Jerusalem to come because I need to walk on those streets of gold and I need to get away from all these people. And if that's where you are, I just pray that God saves you from that. And that you come into a space of true belief that you're called to be a river of life, right? I mean, Jesus said it in the Gospel of John as he encounters this woman. He's like, there'll be streams of living water that flow out of you. It's all there if we'll just kind of be brave enough to question some of the things maybe you were handed. And a church can be a beautiful place of healing, and I know it because I've experienced it with you all. And I can't not get emotional when I go and have coffee and I hear about the pain and the hurt that this world is causing so many hearts and lives, and then I see you here and you're re-engaging and you're thinking about God and the divine and faith and life, and I think it is possible. It is possible that this radical, subversive reality that we call Jesus can actually be a place that heals the nations. Not forces the nations to all worship the way we worship, use the same words for God that we use. No. But brings justice and righteousness and opportunity. But you got to be hungry for it. How many of y'all know you don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry? Right? Because you're just like, just buy everything, But if you go grocery shopping with somebody who is hungry and maybe they don't have a whole lot of money, how many of you ever had that moment where you just are like, let's do it? And you just pile it in the cart as if you were hungry? Because there's joy in the generosity and knowing that you're bringing life and care and hope. And so you got to go grocery shopping with somebody who's hungry. Like if you're like a white male heterosexual like me, it's really hard to hunger and thirst for righteousness because you've been the ones we've been withholding righteousness in a lot of ways with the patriarchy and stuff. And I know that you're fragile. I was fragile too. I still am. But at some point we have to recognize that what I have to do is go shopping with somebody who's really hungry and who doesn't have the means, who's been withheld from them. And then I can be transformed by being proximate. So, to hunger and thirst for righteousness is to desire the healing of the nations, to desire justice and mercy for all people in the very depths of your being. That's actually what I think it means to invite Jesus into your heart. Is to say, I will hunger and thirst for righteousness for those who it's been withheld from. And that is where I will live my life. But that also means you too, because maybe you have been, it has been withheld from you. And maybe there is this space that I need that healing. And it is for you. And I hope that we will be a community of people who say, here it is, the trees that bear the fruit that heal the nations, come and be full. The river of life, when every place else has told you that your life doesn't matter, when every place else has told you that you haven't lived the way you're supposed to live, there's a river of life that flows out because the gates are always open and you are welcome here. And let's get about the business of healing the nations. And so I want to finish the whole series with this very complicated fill-in, okay? So stick with me. Stick with me. The Peacemaker's Guide to the Revelation imagines a church, Big C church, where Jesus the healer meets Jesus the revolutionary, and where together we participate with God in bringing peace on earth. And I would love for that to sum up my life and my personal experience and how I live a life on the peacemaking path of Jesus. And I would love for that to be our church. So the Peacemaker's Guide to the Revelation says there is a church where Jesus, who said, come to me all who are weary and you'll find rest. This Jesus who would heal the sick, right? Where Jesus the healer meets Jesus, the one crucified on the cross, because that Jesus believed deeply in justice, because that Jesus believed enough to stand against the powers of his day, and they crucified him for it. Where both of those Jesuses come together and we can personally find healing and we can be agents of healing, and we will have the power and the courage to stand up to the principalities of darkness in this world. And in doing that, we are participating with the divine to bring peace on earth. That feels like what it's all about. And we can have lots of fun conversations about other things, but that's what it's about. And I think that's what a healthy reading of Revelation offers us. So we're going to have communion here. We got a few minutes to just breathe. You don't have to worry, I'm not playing the piano again. Everybody can calm down. But as we have communion today, I just want to encourage you. This song that we're doing, the kind of chorus of it says, we won't move without you. And this is really based upon, this song comes from a metaphor, an image, a story in the Hebrew scriptures where Moses and the Israelites, Moses says to God, like, we're not going to move unless you go ahead of us. Like you are the guide. And so it's a beautiful prayer for our lives as individuals, that what I want to guide me is love. And we use metaphors for this, right? God, and we use pronouns he, and they're all inaccurate, right? We're making sense of it all, and God is user-friendly. And this song says, but here's the thing, like, I can't get ahead of love. I can't get ahead of God. I've got to follow, and I need to be empowered by love. Because that's what produced the martyrs in the earliest days of Christianity. Trust me, it wasn't, are we, baptizing kids the right way? I mean, we started dying for foolish things later on in our tradition, but early on, in the earliest days, it was, I will not pledge allegiance to Rome. I will not do it. I will not participate. And that costs people their lives. And so we need that to go ahead of us. So what is it that God's inviting you in today? As we have communion, I offer you this invitation of the revelation to start a new life. And it's not an easy one. Anybody who tells you following Jesus is easy, they're seriously misguided. It's a very difficult path at times, but it's a very fulfilling path. And it produces meaning and purpose and joy in the midst of everything that life throws at us. So I offer you that invitation. Maybe it's just to internally make that decision. I'm going to start intentionally walking the peacemaking path of Jesus. If that's you and you want to do that today, you can check the box on the back of your Connect card, and we'd love to get you some information on our Fresh Perspective group where you can begin to explore this peacemaking path. We've developed some resources that are about following the peacemaking path of Jesus to just help us move out of unhealthy spirituality into what we think is a more beautiful, healthy understanding of the gospel that's more ancient. Perhaps maybe that's what it is. Maybe you've been around for a while, you've been walking this peacemaking path, but you're not an official card-carrying member of Crossroads. We don't have cards that we give you, but we'd love for you to be a member. We'd love for you to bring your voice and your gifts and your talents to create a beautiful space for everyone where the tree of the fruit of the tree of life can flow out and the river of life. So we'd love for you to consider that. You can check that box or go in the app. We're getting ready to enter our membership drive season where we just encourage folks to join and become a part of this movement officially, in the sense of your voice matters, your heart and your perspective. And then I want to encourage you to hear the whisper of God to watch the online-only weekend next week. Stay connected. Stay connected even though we aren't in the building. So you gave some great questions, and so we sat down and we filmed them. I spent some time trying to answer some of those questions or provide an answer. I wouldn't say I answered them, but provide an answer. Kia and the music team and the video department have a couple of great songs for us for that week. So I would encourage you to watch it and share it out with people. It's a great opportunity to introduce people to this beautiful community. All right. So we're going to have communion together. I'm going to invite you to stand if you're able to right now for this song and communion. If you're in the back or on the rows, there's communion trays on the side. There's also communion trays on the table. If you find that some are empty, just go steal from a table if you have to. And we're going to sing this song together. Pause for a moment. Reflect. If you're a guest this morning, you are welcome at the table. There are no restrictions. It is an open table. Join us. The body of Christ broken for you. The blood of Christ shed for you.